Hi, welcome to my channel. This is Lock Chuck. What I am doing today is part 3 of my Detainer pick making series. So what we've been working on was making, first we discussed the different aspects of what we were deciding, the material. So right now I'm going with this ejector pin to make a picking tip for these alloy profile style cam locks. And this is kind of what I've came up with so far. So we've got the tensioner. Now we got to get the picking tip. So I think I've showed in my other videos. This is a previous one that I made. It does work with this one, but you know, doesn't do you any good unless you know how to make that. So what this is made of, or is from, is a roll pin. These are available most of the times at a hardware store. They come in various sizes. I mean, you can even get great big boxes full of them for just a few dollars, or if you buy them individually, you're talking probably, you know, maybe, I don't know, $1 you can get 2 or 3 of them. So what I wanted to show here is, I know I'm using I guess it would be imperial measurements, but I kind of relate it to metric as well. So these are technically, besides the length, are the same diameter roll pin. They're both 1/4 inch roll pins. So when I take a measurement of them, I'm going to use millimeters. So 1/4 inch is right about 6 millimeters, just over 6 millimeters. But when I'm measuring 6.6 on that roll pin, 6.6 on that roll pin. So outside diameter, they're almost identical because they're both 1/4 inch. Difference is in the thickness of the material. That one is almost 1. Let's see if I can get a little deeper. 1.3. Let me check the other end. Sometimes they'll vary. So 1.3. With this one is under a millimeter thicker. So the outside diameter is the same, but the inside diameter, you can probably tell on camera that that one's a little bit thinner. Is that a big difference? No, not really, because this one is made out of the thinner wall one. And I have attempted some other ones out of this one. It will work as long as you get the geometry right. But the biggest difference is how much work it may take to get it. So why I say that is because this is our tensioner. It'll slide right through that roll pin. Nothing else is required. However, it will not go into that roll pin. It's not a big deal. I mean, we can kind of mill the inside out with a round file. The easiest way I found to do it is, you know, get it spinning in a, I use a lathe, but for this series I'm going to show you with more basic tools because not everybody has a lathe, but maybe they got a hand drill sitting around. They can use that as their lathe. So what we're going to do is I'm going to probably use this one. It's a little long probably, and the reason I say it's long, you need to take in consideration your handles. Depending on what handles you have, like these are my homemade handles, and here's the RWB. But I mean, there's not much. Well, there is when you collapse them. So there's a pretty good difference in the size of the compact length. Where that comes into play is how long did you make your tensioner? Like my original tensioner is considerably longer. I think this may be, I can't remember if it's 200 or 200. Well, let's see. Where's that? So this one's 150, going by the scale here, and this one's probably a 200 millimeter long pin. So as far as this one's concerned, when it goes into my picking handle, and I've got enough there, so my picking tip is not, you know, picking tip can be that long, but I can still bring it back, or even I can adjust back here. However, if you're picking, or your tensioner is short, so if I go to the back here, if I make my picking tip So it's got to go in a little bit. If I make my picking tip that long, I can only pull back that far. So it's not far enough to be able to work a keyway. You need this full travel. So I have to do two things. I either have to make this, because right now this is a 6mm hole, and we already saw this was what, 6.3, so it won't go in right now. I could probably take pliers, compress it, but that's going to make that hole even smaller, and more we got to grind out. And it's easier to grind off the outside than it is the inside. So what I'll probably do is figure out how long my picking tip needs to be, and a good way to do that, look at your key. How long is your key? So we got to be able to get in there and give it room to be able to stick out of the lock a little bit. So we'll say about half of it, and if I put it up to here, that's about how long I got the picking tip on this one. And then the rest of this can be, ground down a little bit to fit the inside diameter of my picking handles. So something to consider, but if you got larger picking handles, you won't have to do that. So it's all, again, material. You got to look at what you got. What are you trying to accomplish? So what we'll do, we'll go down back to the workshop. I'll show you how I do this. If you'll notice, this end is kind of tapered. So the first thing I'm going to do is probably square up this. So that way I've got a nice square picking surface, where if these roll pins were already flat on one side and tapered so you could hammer in one side, these are meant to be hammered in or driven in, and they're kind of beveled, where this one's on both ends, this one's not. So these are a little bit cheaper made, but they still work. They're hard steel. They're good for picking tips. But anyway, that's kind of my thought process. So again, I'll take you down to the workshop. Probably go ahead and apologize for the last video. If you had any kind of motion sickness or vertigo, it probably may have kicked in. I was wearing the GoPro on my chest, and I don't think that's the best plan. So this time I'm going to try to make it stationary on a tripod, and we'll go from there. So, all right, let's get down to the workshop. Sorry, before we go down to the workshop, something I probably ought to have discussed is, what's our dimensions? Okay. So, why am I picking that up? So if we look at this, we want still half the profile or half the diameter. So we want the picking tip, half the key basically, or this thickness of the key, which is about 3.5, 3.6. So we want the round part here somewhere around 3.6. So that was 3.68. So we want to try to mimic that. We want the support shaft in the middle. We want it pretty thin, probably down to about 1mm. And then the picking tip needs to be about or just slightly smaller than the spacers between discs, because you've got to get in there and move around. So this spacer is 0.48. So we probably want the tip somewhere around 0.4. I'm not sure. So this one's 4.8. So well, depends on how you measure it, I guess. So this one's actually a little thick for this style lock. However, if I look at the thickness of this padlock here, the reason that one's thicker, because I had 0.6 to work with on that lock. So since this style, see, it has a little crease there, a little bit, not necessarily thicker, the disc itself is probably the same. Well, it's actually thinner, but it has this ridge, which makes it act thicker. So where did I get that one from? Anyway, that's kind of what we're need to work on for our dimensions. So this tip is actually, it may work, may be able to get it slide through there, but it's going to possibly be rotating the disc when it gets between two discs. So gotta be mindful. So that's going to give us our dimension to shoot for. I'm going to say we want that to be, well, that one's thicker. What was that? What was the one I had up so thin? Is it this one? Okay. Well, I guess it helps check more than one. So this was 0.6. That one there, I guess that was a thin one. Let's see, that one's 1.3. So that was a thinner one between the profile disc and the next disc. So the rest of them are thicker. Okay, so just checking them all. So, okay, besides that one, this is our only thin one. So, let's see, make sure that one's in the right place, because that one is on there, and that comes off. So that's the one for that one. So it goes between those two. Okay. And it does have a gate, so we do kind of need to navigate between the two. So we'll shoot for about 0.45. How about that? That'll be our goal. Yeah, it's thinner that way. Make sure I'm zeroed. Pretty close. Okay. Well, we'll shoot for 0.4. Just. Alright. So maybe we can. If we had to, maybe we can work the tip around that one. But the rest of them were like 0.6. Yep. So. Okay. So we know our dimensions. Sorry. Just had to come back. Make sure you understood that. What dimensions were we shooting for? It's alright. Let's go. Now let's get down there.
Alright, so here measuring the key up to the roll pin, made a mark with a file so I could see how far I needed to file back so it can fit into the handle, and just have the drill and a vise and some soft jaws, and got it spinning. Take some measurements, see how much I need to take off. Still a lot to go. This is just basically a file and measure process. Use the handle as a gauge if need to. Put about 6 millimeters because that's the diameter of my handle. Still not quite, so see how much more I need to go and make sure I'm even. Okay, making several measurements throughout. So still got about 0.3 millimeters to go, and it's still got pretty good thickness left, so we're good. So the handle does fit now. Just kind of show you the final measurement, which turned out just under 6 millimeters, so it's good to go. So now we'll do the inside. So we need that inside to go, and I started filing and realized I wasn't making it anywhere because it was a standard file, so I switched to a diamond file for the inside. It is a round file, and just keep going, and basically all I'm going to do, not a good way to measure diameter besides just trial and error with the rope, with the ejector pin. I'm trying to show you how far it's going in there now. Got it on there and having trouble getting it back out. So I had to get a pair of pliers to get it back out. But anyway, put it back in there and continue this until it slides about 3/4 the way in. So we got a good fit there. I'm happy with that. So now we're going to switch to the grinder and flatten or take that bevel out. Give us a nice flat edge for a picking tip. Now it gives us a little bit thicker area versus using that bevel. So once that's done, I'm going to switch over to the Dremel and I'm going to start cutting. Just a little measurement, just making a little mark so I know how it goes. So what I'm doing is, if you've ever cut anything trying to cut a square in something with a round blade, you're not going to make it perfect. So what I'll do is I'm making the long cuts right now across the back. It does get very hot very quick, so I have to quench right often. So I'm cutting the 1mm support, if you will, that runs the length of the picking tip. So I'll make some shorter cuts to go to match up to where I have the long cuts, and then once I get close, I'll be able to break those pieces off and then kind of grind the rest of it away or cut at angles. So just make small cuts, because once you get there, see, so close enough now, I was able to snap that piece off. This one's not quite cut deep enough to get it off, so I'll do a few more cuts and it'll come right off, and we've got our general shape once this comes off. So we got a general shape. The head's still thick. Like I said, it can't get a real good square cut with a round bit. So here I'm trying to do my final cuts. What I'll do, that'll be my final depth. And I'll try to extend as close as I can, and then I'll probably go in at an angle just to take the bulk of the metal out and then finish grinding it with the edge of the grinding wheel. Doing there. So sorry, my camera stopped again, but basically I'm to the tip and I'm just trying to thin it out. So now I'm actually switched to the final, if you will, the final diameter of the picking tip. So I'm keeping the support shaft straight back, so you kind of have even on both sides of the shaft. And there we have, after grinding, got it to about 3/6, which is the measurement we were needing. So now I'm trying to thin it down to about as much as I can, because we want to shoot for that 0.4mm thick. So that was taking a little bit of time. I got in a hurry, switched over to the bench grinder, which is fine, but I probably shouldn't have taken it as far as I did on the bench grinder. So man, just doing some measurements, see how much I need to take off. There's little light bumps until I get it really close to the dimension. We're getting very close. Probably should have stopped again, and so right there we're at 0.4, and so checking my shaft. Shaft's still a little.
Alright, so this is what we have so far. As you saw from the video, me measuring, got a little thin on one side, but still feels pretty strong, sturdy. Just fits in this lock right here, very good. So I did give it a clean real quick before I brought it up, with some metal parts cleaner. That way it got all the metal grime off of it, and I can feel some little burrs. May hit it with some little fine sandpaper, but it slides right in. I mean, it's sliding very smoothly. So I guess really the next thing maybe need to do is try to put it in a pick and see how it does. So I may leave that for part 4 because I don't know how long, may run into some issues and may not. I don't know. But this video has already been long enough, so I will leave that to the next part. I'll try to get it put together, see if we got enough length. It's gonna be kind of close, but we'll see. All right, we'll see how it does. All right, that'll probably be the next video. Thanks for watching.